Hello and welcome to a beautiful late winter day here in sunny Nova Scotia, and welcome to my channel, The Optimistic Gardener. My name is Steve Farley. Well, as I said, it's late winter, and even though it was actually -18 as I was -18 centigrade as I was walking down from my car share yesterday morning, I could feel the hint spring is tantalisingly close. And as it's close, I've been doing all my normal pre-spring tasks of cleaning the pots, etc., and making sure everything's ready for starting to sow seeds, which I'll be doing in the next week or so. But as I was cleaning all these pots, etc., everything's plastic. I noticed, and I noticed it obviously every single year. Everything's plastic. But it's great stuff, isn't it? It's so flexible. It's in your pots, it's in the clothes that we wear, the netting that we use to cover our plants. This polytunnel is obviously a lot of plastic in there. So it's really good stuff. But the trouble is, it doesn't go away. It doesn't break down. It just gets smaller and smaller and breaks down into smaller and smaller bits. And I read this article the other day, and it said there's apparently 51 trillion microparticles of plastic in the ocean. Now, whether you believe in global warming, this has got nothing really to do with global warming. This is just basic pollution. And those 51 trillion plastic microparticles are going to turn into, apparently, by 2050, there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than there is fish, and 99% of seabirds will have eaten plastic, and that plastic is obviously being transferred to us. All that microplastic is being transferred to us in the fish and the food that we eat nowadays. It can't be healthy. And if you can see a picture there on that I've put up, this is of one of these waste plastic islands that is created by the currents, and there's apparently thousands of these plastic waste islands around the world. That's just unbelievable. So I've decided to make a stand, and I made a promise to myself that I am not going to let any more plastic that's used in my garden leave this property. And over the next couple of years, I'm going to try and have no new plastic coming in to my property. I can't do that much about all the stuff that comes in from our food shopping. We're trying to not use plastic bags, etc. But in my garden, I'm making a stand. So before we get into a few tips and tricks on how we can cut down on using plastic in the garden, here's a last stat. Apparently, 350,000 tonnes of horticultural waste, not the whole waste, but just horticultural waste, enters the US waste recycling cycle every single year. 350,000 tonnes. So for you guys in the UK, that's equivalent to 5 Queen Elizabeth class aircraft carriers. And for you guys in the States and in North America that might be more familiar with this, it's 3.5 Nimitz class aircraft carriers. So 3.5 of the largest aircraft carriers in the world worth of plastic, horticultural plastic, enters the recycling every single year. That is bonkers. So how can we cut down on the plastic that we use in the garden? Well, I've got a few tips and tricks for you. The first one, compost. Lots of compost. Everybody uses compost every year, and often people get their compost in bags of compost, and those are plastic bags. So how about making more of your own compost? It's easily done. You can a little compost heap in the corner, or if you've got a nice big garden like me, I can make quite a bit of compost. That is a great way of cutting down on the the bags of compost that you bring in every single season. Okay, you haven't got enough of a compost heap to make your own compost. So how about getting your compost delivered in bulk? You can get big, you know, lorry loads or skip loads dumped onto your property, and that is much cheaper, and often it's actually 10 times better for your plants than the actual compost you get in these bags. Yeah, but I don't need all that compost, I hear you say. Well, how about clubbing together with your neighbours? That's a great way of getting together, getting cheap compost, and again getting good for your soil compost without bringing plastic bags in. And it's that added bonus of having that little social contact with your neighbours, which we often don't have nowadays. So think about that, bulk compost. And leading on from bulk, how about mulching? So again, instead of buying all your mulch in bags of mulch, how about making your own mulch? Leaf mould is absolutely superb mulch. Seaweed is fantastic in the veg garden. It's good all around the garden, but it's not always aesthetically pleasing in the flower bed. But seaweed's a great mulch, and I often use it. Pine needles, things like that. They're fantastic mulches that you can make yourself. And again, you can get that delivered in bulk instead of having plastic bags worth of mulch. So there's a couple of ways there of cutting down on the plastic with cutting down on plastic bags. Think about trying to reuse the pots that you have as much as is possible. And as I was cleaning my pots, my seed trays actually, I had a broken one there. So obviously one of the first things you think, oh, this is no good, I'm going to have to get rid of it. But if I tape this up, I've got some black plastic tape there, I'll be able to reuse that for a good few years longer. But the point is, let's try and reuse the pots and the plastic pots that we have as much as is possible. Or try not to bring any new plastic pots, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to, you know, within the next couple of years, I'm not bringing any more plastic pots in. So when you go to the nursery, how about bringing some newspaper with you and saying to the people there, I want this plant, but I don't want it in that plastic pot, and just wrapping it in the newspaper and bringing it back. Now I know that's like a bit of fuss, and you may be embarrassed about it, but you know, it's really, it's just really important to cut down on the plastic. Now, another way is reusing plastic and things, repurposing of plastic that you have in the house. So, you know, often food. We've got the old yogurt pots here. We eat a lot of yogurt in the house. You know, that is absolutely brilliant for potting your tomatoes up. Drill a few holes in the bottom, and Bob's your uncle. Cheap pot, and that's going to last a good long time. So instead of chucking it out in the recycling, recycle it yourself at home. What about, everybody loves a nice rotisserie chicken nowadays, but I always feel rather guilty, or I used to feel rather guilty with this, you know, the plastic that it comes in. It seems a bit of a fuss, but actually, look at this. Nice little seed tray, drill a few holes in the bottom, put the lid on, hey presto, got a mini greenhouse. That's a superb bit of kit. And the same with these. I think there was a salad of some sort in here. Seemed a lot of fuss for a salad. Whatever it was, again, drill a few holes in the bottom, got a nice little mini greenhouse for the seedlings there. So that's great. Toilet rolls. These are one of the oldest sort of hacks that we often see around the bazaars, but they're brilliant. Put a seed in here, especially for your legumes and your climbing beans, etc., that have a nice long root run. They're great for planting these up, and then they have the double bonus of obviously being biodegradable, and they'll just rot down and add something to the soil as well. And all these sorts of toilet rolls, plastic whatever this, I don't know whether this was tin foil or whatever, these sorts of holders, you can cut these down into nice little planters. And my piece de resistance at the moment, instead of having all these plastic trays, how about a seed tray made out of pallet wood? Just about free. And you can see a link up on the screen there. I've just done a collaboration with Hugh Riches from Hugh's Nursery, really good YouTube gardener, got lots and lots of followers, been doing it a long time, and I just did a collaboration with him where I made, or we both made actually, a seed tray from pallets. But look at that, as the bonus of being really sturdy and I think looking quite good as well. And I think that's going to last a long time. Nice bit of hardwood. But yeah, so cutting down on the old on the use of plastic, there's a great way of doing that. Another reuse of plastic is the plastic water bottles, and I did a video recently of how you can reuse these sort of plastic water bottles by doing the winter sowing, as you can see on the screen, and there's a link up there for that video. But also another way, cut the bottom off these plastic water bottles, and you can use these. You've got a nice little mini greenhouse for your tender, not so much your tender, but your young plants out early spring, might be affected by frost or even critters. This, putting these down will give them a nice bit of protection, and that you can reuse these, store them away every winter, bring them out again in the spring and the autumn. Great stuff. Another good way that we often use plastic, and we hardly even think about it, is the row markers and plant name markers that we had. They're often plastic nowadays, especially from the nursery. But when you're doing your own plants, why not use the old popsicle or lolly sticks, as we say in the UK? They're great. Just write the name on there, and again they have the added bonus, in a couple of years time they'll be biodegradable. Chuck them in the compost heap after they're no good, and they'll go back into the soil. Also, we've always got loads of, everybody's got the odd broken terracotta pot knocking around the garden in the corner. Why not use these? You can mark these up with the name of your plant, and they can often, once you've knocked them about a bit, they can look quite nice in your border. So there's another good way. What about painting some stones or some sort of small rocks with plant names and little pictures, and that's a really good way of getting your children out in the garden as well, because they love painting all that sort of stuff up. So there's a couple of different ways of cutting down on plastic and reusing things that are in the garden as well. Look at other methods of weed suppression other than that that black fabric weed suppressor that you often see in rolls, because that has lots of actual plastic in it. So again, look at different ways. I use a lot of cardboard. I lay sheets of cardboard down on an area that I want to suppress the weeds, and then you can just put a nice bit of compost over the top of it, and that will do just the same job, and add the added bonus of, once it rots down, adds itself into the soil. And you can get lots of this, you know, the big sheets of cardboard, you know, go down your local bike shop or your local hardware store. Once you start looking for these things, the same with when you're looking for pallets, etc. Once you start looking, it's funny how there's lots of opportunities to actually get this sort of stuff, but it just takes a little bit of work, and I know it's difficult to start with, but it's important. So there's a few different ways, I think it was 7, all mixed up, of cutting down on plastic or reusing, repurposing plastic that you've got in the garden, so that your overall footprint of using plastic is lowered, and we can really help the environment and stop polluting our way to a rotten planet. Hopefully I haven't been too preachy here, but I'm going to leave you, if you're still undecided of whether you should be cutting down on your plastic, I'm going to leave you with this photograph of plastic waste in the environment at sea and what it can do. and I'll leave it up to you. Job's a good one.